Introduction. The feedback loop from hell. Mark Manson kicks off the book with a story about a guy named Charles Bukowski, an alcoholic and a failed writer who, despite all odds, became a successful author. The key? He didn't pretend to be anything he wasn't. He embraced his flaws and never pretended to care about things he didn't. That's the core of Manson's message. We all have a limited number of fucks to give, and we waste too many of them on things that don't matter. The first step toward a better life is caring less, not about everything, but about the right things. Manson's introduction sets the tone for a brutal yet honest self-help philosophy. Instead of relying on feel-good affirmations and relentless positivity, he argues for a more grounded and honest approach to life. We're constantly told by social media, advertising, and pop psychology that we need to be better, do more, and never settle. This creates an unrealistic pressure to always be on, always be perfect. The result? A never-ending loop of dissatisfaction, anxiety, and guilt. Manson refers to this as the feedback loop from hell, where our emotions about our emotions make everything worse. If you're anxious, you feel anxious about being anxious. If you're insecure, you feel insecure about being insecure. The solution isn't pretending these feelings don't exist, but accepting them and choosing what to give a fuck about. Life becomes better not when you give no FX, but when you give fewer, better FX. Chapter 1. Don't try. This paradox is at the heart of the book. The more you try to be positive all the time, the less satisfied you become. Manson calls this the feedback loop from hell. You feel bad about feeling bad. You're anxious about being anxious. He uses Bukowski again as an example. The man didn't try to be a great writer. He just wrote, and by embracing his raw, ugly truth, he resonated with people. Don't try to be something you're not. Just be. Manson says that problems are a constant in life. Solving one just gives you a better problem. Happiness comes from solving problems, not avoiding them. Key point. Trying too hard makes you miserable. Care selectively. Focus on what really matters. Manson dismantles the common myth that we should always aim for positivity and self-improvement. According to him, trying to be constantly happy sets you up for failure. The pressure to always be improving implies that you're not good enough as you are. Instead, Manson promotes radical honesty with oneself. Recognize your flaws, your limitations, and accept them. This doesn't mean giving up or settling. It means choosing your battles wisely. He explains that Bukowski's success wasn't due to relentless ambition or high self-esteem, but because he owned his identity. He didn't try to sugarcoat his failures or his lifestyle. His writing resonated precisely because it was raw and real. In the same way, Manson encourages readers to drop the pretense and focus on what genuinely matters to them. Don't chase success based on someone else's definition. Redefine success according to your own values, and you'll find that you're less stressed and more fulfilled. Chapter 2. Happiness is a problem. We are wired to be dissatisfied. Evolution didn't create us to be happy. It created us to survive, reproduce, and adapt. Manson argues that life is about choosing your problems. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of the problems you choose to solve. The key isn't avoiding pain, but choosing worthwhile struggles. He references Buddha. Life is suffering. But suffering can be meaningful if it's attached to something important. Key point. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Happiness comes from solving problems that matter to you. In this chapter, Manson unpacks how our endless pursuit of happiness often leads us in the opposite direction. We think that eliminating problems will make us happy, but Manson argues that problems are the foundation of happiness. Life without problems is meaningless. True satisfaction comes not from avoiding pain, but from facing the pain that aligns with our values. He draws on psychological studies and philosophical ideas to reinforce his point. From Stoicism to Buddhism, wisdom traditions have long taught that acceptance of pain and imperfection is the gateway to contentment. Manson pushes this further by asking readers to actively choose their suffering. Instead of asking, "What do I want out of life?" he suggests asking, "What am I willing to struggle for?" Choosing the right problems means you're choosing a meaningful life. It's not about reaching some final destination of bliss, but about engaging with life in a way that matters. Embrace the struggle, and happiness becomes a byproduct. Chapter 3. You are not special. This chapter is a direct attack on the self-esteem movement that teaches everyone they're extraordinary. Manson says most people are average at most things, and that's okay. Believing you're special leads to entitlement. You either believe you deserve greatness without effort, or you believe your problems are more severe than everyone else's. Real self-worth comes from honesty and responsibility, not feeling good all the time. Key point: accepting your ordinariness is the first step toward real growth. Manson takes a sledgehammer to the cultural obsession with being exceptional. We've been fed the idea that we're all destined for greatness, and anything less is failure. This leads to delusion, entitlement, and fragility. If you believe you're destined to be extraordinary, every normal experience feels like a letdown. Conversely, accepting that you're average relieves pressure. Most of us are average at most things, and that's normal. Real achievement comes from consistent effort and honest self-assessment. When you stop needing to be special, you're free to actually improve. He also discusses how victimhood culture has made people feel that their problems are uniquely tragic. But suffering is universal. Instead of amplifying your problems to feel significant, accept them as part of the human condition. Then take responsibility for them. That's where real empowerment begins. Chapter 4. The value of suffering. What determines your success isn't what you want, but what pain you're willing to endure. Everyone wants a six-pack, but not everyone wants to go through the pain of dieting and working out. He tells a story of a man obsessed with becoming a rock star, but who finally realized he didn't actually enjoy the process. He liked the fantasy, not the struggle. That realization set him free. Key point: you must choose what pain you're willing to sustain. That choice defines your life. Manson emphasizes that suffering isn't something to avoid, but something to strategically choose. Every pursuit has a price. Wanting something is easy. Enduring the process that leads to it is the hard part. The difference between people who achieve and those who don't isn't desire. It's tolerance for discomfort. He uses examples from his own life and the lives of others to illustrate how suffering becomes meaningful when it's connected to values. If you hate the process of what you're chasing, then maybe you're chasing the wrong thing. Understanding what kind of suffering you're willing to accept leads to clarity in your goals and motivation. Rather than obsessing over what you want, ask what you're willing to struggle for. That reframing reveals your real priorities. If you're not willing to suffer through writing, you'll never be a writer. If you're not willing to suffer through sales calls, you won't succeed in business. Your life is defined not by what you want, but by what you endure. Chapter 5. You are always choosing. Manson emphasizes responsibility over blame. You may not be to blame for your circumstances, but you are responsible for how you respond to them. He uses the story of William James, the father of American psychology, who suffered from depression and only turned his life around when he decided to take full responsibility for his actions. Victim mentality is a trap. Taking responsibility for your choices, even in crappy situations, gives you power. Key point: you can't control everything, but you can always control your response. In a world that constantly pushes blame outward, Manson calls us to look inward. He draws a sharp line between fault and responsibility. While you might not be at fault for a bad childhood, illness, or losing your job, you're still responsible for how you deal with it. He shows how taking responsibility, even in unfair situations, is a form of self-liberation. It doesn't mean blaming yourself, it means claiming your agency. Once you own your reaction, you reclaim your power. This perspective can transform how you view setbacks and obstacles. Manson also highlights how people avoid responsibility because it's hard. Blaming external factors is easy and emotionally comfortable, but long-term, it makes you powerless. Responsibility, on the other hand, leads to growth and resilience. Taking ownership of your choices, even small ones, builds a habit of empowerment. The more responsible you become, the more control you gain over your life, and the more aligned your actions are with your values. Chapter 6. You're wrong about everything, but so am I. This chapter is about uncertainty and growth. Manson says that all beliefs are probably wrong to some extent. Growth comes from questioning yourself. He argues that certainty is the enemy of progress. The more certain you are, the less you question, the less you learn. Embracing uncertainty opens the door to curiosity and improvement. He tells the story of a man who falsely confessed to a crime, believing it would protect his family, only to suffer for it. The lesson: our minds lie to us all the time. Question them. Key point: doubt yourself regularly. Growth requires humility. Manson argues that we cling to certainty because it feels safe, but it also makes us blind. The need to always be right turns us into rigid, defensive people who stop growing. He suggests that true confidence comes from the ability to admit when we're wrong and stay open to learning. He draws on cognitive science to explain how confirmation bias and self-serving narratives shape our understanding of the world. The more we question ourselves, the more we grow. Life isn't about being right all the time. It's about being willing to be wrong and adjust. Letting go of certainty also means embracing vulnerability. You have to risk being wrong to make meaningful progress. This applies to relationships, careers, and personal beliefs. The more we accept our fallibility, the more we develop emotional maturity and flexibility. Growth is impossible without humility. Chapter 7. Failure is the way forward. Manson calls failure the path to success. The only way to learn is by doing, failing, and doing again. He introduces the do-something principle. Action isn't just the result of motivation, it's also the cause of it. Most people wait to feel motivated before they act. That's backwards. If you start doing something, even if it's small, momentum builds. Key point: action creates motivation. Do something, anything, and learn from the outcome. In this chapter, Manson tackles the fear of failure. He explains how fear paralyzes people, leading them to procrastinate or give up before they begin. But the reality is that failure is essential. It teaches, it humbles, and it refines. Every successful person failed more times than others even tried. The do-something principle is Manson's antidote to inaction. He flips the traditional model. Instead of waiting for inspiration to act first, and let motivation follow. Start writing the article, start the workout, make the phone call. Action breeds clarity and confidence. Manson provides examples of how this principle changed his own life and helped readers overcome creative blocks, anxiety, and fear. The principle is especially useful for people trapped in perfectionism. You don't need the perfect plan, you need motion. In essence, progress comes from messy, imperfect effort. Waiting for the right moment, the right tools, or the right mood is just another form of self-sabotage. Take action now, however small, and let failure be your teacher. Chapter 8. The importance of saying no. This chapter is about boundaries and values. Manson says that commitment requires rejection. Choosing one thing means not choosing something else. That's where meaning comes from. If you never say no, you never really say yes either. You stay stuck in ambiguity and fear of missing out. He uses romantic relationships as an example. To build a strong relationship, you need to commit, which means rejecting all other options. The same applies to jobs, goals, friendships. Key point: saying no is essential. Clear values and boundaries create freedom. Manson explores how saying no is a form of self-respect. When we lack boundaries, we allow ourselves to be pulled in a million directions, often serving others' values instead of our own. This leads to resentment, burnout, and aimlessness. Commitment is framed as an act of liberation, not limitation. When you choose a path and reject others, you free yourself to go deeper. The depth of experience, in relationships, careers, or personal goals, comes from exclusivity and clarity. He also tackles the fear of rejection and judgment. People often avoid saying no because they want to be liked. But Manson reminds us that not everyone deserves our time, attention, or energy. Being selective is how you preserve your peace and protect your priorities. True power comes from being clear about what matters and unapologetically drawing the line. Say no often and strategically, and your yes will mean more. Chapter 9. And then you die. The final chapter is about death and how accepting it makes life better. Avoiding death thoughts only weakens us. Facing our mortality gives us clarity and urgency. Manson talks about his experience in South America, where a close friend died unexpectedly. That event shattered his illusions and forced him to reevaluate his priorities. In the face of death, most things don't matter. That's why we should focus only on what truly does. Key point: embrace your mortality. It sharpens your focus on what actually matters. Manson concludes the book with a profound truth, that death is the ultimate filter. Everything trivial falls away when you face the reality that life is finite. The fear of death isn't something to suppress but to engage with. It can be the catalyst for living more intentionally. He shares personal grief and existential reflections to underscore how mortality transforms priorities. The death of his friend became a wake-up call. He began to strip away false pursuits and redirect his energy to what deeply mattered. Death clarifies values. It makes you question whether you're living according to your beliefs or just coasting through routines. When you truly accept death, it becomes easier to let go of meaningless stress, chase purpose, and take risks that align with your authentic self. The paradox is that facing death makes life more vibrant. You stop giving a fuck about appearances and start giving a fuck about meaning. In the end, what you choose to care about is your legacy. Final thoughts. The subtle art. Manson wraps up the book by reminding readers that the subtle art of not giving a fuck is not about being indifferent. It's about being very selective with your care. Caring about fewer things more deeply leads to a richer, more grounded life. The goal isn't to avoid problems, but to pick better ones. Not to feel good all the time, but to feel good about the right things. Manson urges readers to live by values rooted in reality and responsibility. Rather than seeking constant validation, seek growth. Instead of avoiding discomfort, embrace it when it leads to something worthwhile. The book's blunt tone is part of its charm, but beneath the profanity and punchlines lies a deeply philosophical worldview. It's about maturity, acceptance, and the pursuit of meaningful struggle. If you care about everything, you're deluded. If you care about nothing, you're lost. But if you care deeply about just a few things, you become powerful. So, choose your values. Choose your struggles. Choose your fucks wisely.